Now, for commutative, everyone say commutative.
Commutative.
For commutative, look at 8 plus 9. What is 8 plus 9?
17.
And then when you have 9 plus 8 and you switch the order, what do you get? Okay, so you get the same thing. So that means the commutative property works for addition. What if you try multiplication? What is 5 times 6?
30.
If you switch the order, what is 6 times 5?
30.
So therefore, the commutative property also works for multiplication. But think about if you tried subtraction. If you did 10 minus 5, what would you get? 5. What if you switched it and you did 5 minus 10, what would you get?
-5.
Good, you get a -5. Those are not equal, so it doesn't work for subtraction. What about division? If you did 10 divided by 5, what would you get?
2.
If you switched it and you did 5 divided by 10, what would you get?
Point something.
0.5. Okay, so we know that the commutative property does not work for subtraction or division, but it does work for addition and multiplication. Do we have any questions on the commutative property? Okay, next, let's talk about the associative property. Look at the root word of associative. I want associative property. Think about associates or who you associate with. I want you to think about your friends here in a way. And so look, one of the easy ways to notice the associative property is that a lot of times it's the longest one, and it has to do with what numbers are grouped in the parentheses. So I'm going to give an example that some of you, this will help. And if you are a middle school girl, this will probably make a lot of sense to you. And boys, it will kind of make sense to you because you might have seen girls do this. So here we have, listen, here we have 3 and 4. See? 3 and 4 are in a group. So therefore 3 and 4 are best friends. But one day 4 says something to 3 and it makes 3 mad. So girls, what does 3 do?
3 goes away.
To who? 2. She goes to 2, and now 2 and 3 are BFF, and 4 is now on the outside. So remember, with the associative property, think about friends, think about grouping, and make sure, listen, make sure that you have different numbers in the parentheses. Okay? See what I mean by that is 3 and 4, they're in the parentheses, but then 2 and 3 are in the parentheses. So with the associative property, make sure that you have different numbers in the parentheses. Now, let's just make sure that these are equal. 3 times 4 is 12, times 2 gives you 24, and 2 times 3 is 6, times 4 is 24. Yes, those are equal, so it works for multiplication. Is everyone listening to me?
Yes.
Okay. Now, look with me at addition. Same concept. At first you're grouping 4 and 5. So 4 plus 5 is 9, and then add the 3, and that's 12. What if you group 3 and 4, if you move the parentheses to different numbers? 3 plus 4 is 7 plus 5 is 12. They equal the same thing. So the associative property works for either one. Any questions? Okay. Garrett. Yes, please. I made a mistake right here. I knew I had an error in this from last year, but I forgot what it was. Change subtraction. That should not say subtraction. That should say multiplication. So everyone make sure that they change that. Any questions on associative? Okay. Let's talk about distributive. Now, for the distributive property, what you're doing is whatever number is in front of the parentheses, and remember, what operation are you doing with the 3 when it's not written?
Multiply.
You're multiplying. So you're multiplying 3 times 4 plus 3 times 6. Okay? So when you work that out, 3 times 4 is 12, plus 3 times 6 is 18. And when you add those, you get 30. Now, as I'm going over this, some of you might be thinking, well, what's the point of that? I can just use PEMDAS, which we went over yesterday, and I'm going to get the same thing. By doing 4 plus 6 is 10, 10 times 3 is 30, and you're getting the same thing. Yes, you could do it like that, however, at the end of the year, we're going to be having that right there be be a variable, and you have to use it. And that is when I will say, I went over this with you at the beginning of the year, you should remember it, and then you are forced to use it, the distributed property. And that's when I'm like, you have to use the distributed property. Oh, I have to tell you about the grandmother analogy. Now, I want you all to imagine the grandmother. Now, imagine that you and your sibling drove with your parents down to see your grandmother. And so you go up to the front door, and the first thing that your grandmother does is she hugs you, and then she goes to your sibling and she hugs your sibling. See, the parentheses are like a hug, okay? And so she hugs the sibling and then she hugs the other sibling, okay? So look, you're going to be multiplying each of these. 3 times 4 is 12 plus 3 times 6 is 18, and when you add that, you are getting 30. Now, sometimes you will see this written like this. 4 plus 6 times 3. You will see that 3 on the back. You're doing the same thing. 3 times 4 plus 3 times 6. And so sometimes the grandmother's at the back door to give you all hugs. So you can remember it like that as well. Now it's time for the identity property. I always think this is the easiest one. I think this one sticks out and it's really easy to figure out what it is. Identity. Now, what one number can you add to any number and still get the same thing?
0.
0. 0 is called the additive identity. What one number can you multiply by any number and still get the same thing, Blake?
1.
1 is called the multiplicative identity. Everyone say multiplicative identity. Okay, and so when you find the identity property, a lot of times you either need to indicate if it's the multiplicative or additive, and you do that by, if it's additive, put just a plus sign. If it's multiplicative, put a multiplication sign. Any questions on that?
No, ma'am.
Raise your hand if you have questions on any of the properties.